we are going to dive in, and then whoever else will join, they will join throughout. So I'm excited. And just so you all are aware, I am recording this and I will share this out on the flip side once it gets and goes live. I've not had the opportunity to meet you. My name is Stephanie Feger, and I am the Chief Strategist of the emPowered PR Group, where we help nonfiction authors really help make a splash in the community, in the world, within their niche, and impact, and really make their author impact. We also love supporting fiction authors too, and these workshops are great for both nonfiction and fiction alike. And today, though, we are specifically talking about a very interesting kind of part of authorship, and that is authorpreneurship. Authorpreneurship, that is something that so few people probably know what it's about, but it's pretty easy to articulate what that is. Hey, Miranda, I'm going to put you on mute if you don't mind. Cool. All right. So we have many people that will be joining also here shortly. And but for those who are here, I'm curious. We've got a small but mighty crowd, and I'm just curious. You can stick it in the chat. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and just put in the chat your answer, or if that's you, raise your hand. I'm interested on who has ever wanted to actually write a book and who has written a book. So out of our current attendees, I would love to know who has wanted to or written a book. I'm guessing writing a book, yay, Miranda, writing a book is something that you wouldn't be, if you weren't interested in, you probably wouldn't be interested in or being on this call. Sorry if I'm distracted. We keep having more people come in, so I have to let them in. And let's see. Hi, Andrea. I'm going to put you on mute whenever she comes on. Okay. So Miranda, you have mentioned you have been in other people's books, but it's your turn now. That's awesome. That's exciting. I love hearing that. Andrea, I'm going to put you on mute, but you're welcome to come off if we need to. Okay. And Kenneth, you mentioned that you have written a book. Fantastic. I'm curious if you want to put it in the chat. What type of book? Is this a fiction or a nonfiction? Miranda, you too. And Andrea, I know what you're working on. You can put it in there too. I was just chatting with the group on who has wanted to write a book and what type of book that might be. Miranda, nonfiction would be a great fit for you. Absolutely. Kenneth, is your book fiction or nonfiction? Cue the Jeopardy music. I love I love that. Well, when you get a second, Kenneth, put that in the chat. I'm curious. And Andrea, oh yes, a yoga for single moms. Love it. Nonfiction, specifically poetry. Fantastic. Awesome. All righty. Now, my second question to that is, have any of you guys ever considered how writing a book could actually build a business and or grow a current one? Put that in the chat. Yeah, Miranda's like, absolutely, because I've been listening to Stephanie, and Stephanie talks about this all the time, right? Yes, exactly. So the beauty of writing a book has the power to build or grow a business. And that's what we're talking about today. I call that the Authorpreneur Equation. All righty. Look, I got ahead of myself. All right. So I realize authorpreneur in and of itself might be easy to articulate because it's a blending of two words, right? It's a blending of author and entrepreneur. And yet I actually think that there's a bit more depth to it. If you really want to build or grow a business alongside your book or with your book, there are three things that are pivotal to be cognizant of. The first one is to make sure that you actually have a message to share, something that people will actually find valuable. This is oddly enough, not easy for people because we get really excited about the things that we're bringing to the table, but sometimes we forget that we need someone to actually be able to invest in it and show interest in it. The second thing is we want to make sure you write a book about it. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to write a book about it. And then the third thing is you can't just let the book sit on the bookshelves. You need to use that book to build or grow a business from it. So simply put, I'm thinking I have a slide on this. Yep. Simply put, you write a book, you have a message that you write a book from, and you build a business with it. or use the book as a calling card to grow a business. It's that simple. So before I get into the weeds on how to tackle that, some of you may or may not know a little bit about my journey and about how I did just that in a very weird way and unexpected way of how I tackled that. So I had a dream to write a book, literally, and that dream called me to evaluate how I could do that. How was I going to bring to life a message that I felt called to share and do it in a way that was impactful? Well, oddly enough, I began my authorpreneur journey before actually writing the book. I had fallen and found a publisher and a book coach and this whole journey, and I didn't know how I was going to financially afford it. And I remember telling my husband, okay, so I feel like I'm supposed to do this, but I'm not quite sure what the next right step is. But I feel like there's a step before it. And I said, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to just kind of listen. And we had actually, it was around Christmas, around the November timeframe. So my in-laws had just bought a new home. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law had. And I decided I would do what anybody who was excited about Christmas gift giving, and I would make a wreath for them, because isn't that what everybody does? No, they don't. I don't know why I was going to do that, but I watched every YouTube video possible. I made a wreath. I was so proud of it. And I posted it on Facebook to acknowledge this accomplishment I had done. And before I knew it, I was actually being asked, do you sell these wreaths? And I'm like, yes. No, but yes, I'm going to. And within 6 months or so, I actually had enough money to fund my publishing journey because I created a wreath. What I realized through that process of helping over 1,000 people either make or deliver wreaths to across the US, which is really exciting over the course of a couple of years, that was actually just a part of the overarching efforts and journey for me to become an authorpreneur, because it taught me basic business skills that prepared me for when my book came out and how I could leverage a book to build or grow my own business. So I like to always share that, because sometimes some of the best authorpreneur insights happen when you least expect it. Interestingly enough, that wreath journey actually helped me create my author platform, because every wreath I sold, I made it really crystal clear to the people who bought them why I was doing it, that it was funding a book that I felt called to read or to write, and I would love for them to know about it. Would they be interested in learning more? And I built an email list alongside. And in 2018, my first book, Color Today Pretty, came out. I had goals and plans and dreams for this book. I was going to go on the stages and talk about perspective and life and balance and, creation of your own success and happiness. And, sometimes life with a capital L has plan, and it sometimes is different than your own life. And that was proof of it, because the moment my book came out, people started uncovering, Stephanie, how do you know how to market a book? And little did I connect the dots on that my marketing experience in the last 15 years prior to the book coming out would actually play a big part into how my book could help build and grow a business, which is now the emPowered PR Group. I've gone on to publish a second book in 2021, and I'm working on books 3 and 4 now. And now all of them are in alignment with the business that I have now to help other authors become empowered and spread their message. So I became a authorpreneur by happenstance, not by choice. I always tell people I did not want to be an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur definitely didn't even know authorpreneur was a possibility. My husband was the one that was going to be the entrepreneur, and I was nice and comfy cozy in my corporate job where I was going to retire. And I was impacted actually by a massive corporate layoff that was the biggest blessing I could have imagined, because I had been writing this book in silence and didn't tell anybody about it. And I would not be able to do what I'm doing now if I hadn't published that book, and if my book coach and my publisher hadn't seen in me the ability and the need to inspire other people in this way. I share this with you not to say, yay, rah, rah, go Stephanie, but more in the fact of, if you're already a step ahead of me or other authorpreneurs out there, if you know that you want to leverage your book to build or grow a business, because I didn't. And I fought it, y'all, like totally, completely fought it, tried so hard to run from it, and it wouldn't let me. And now I'm so glad it didn't, because the emPowered PR Group was born in 2018. And it's been going strong ever since. I absolutely love being able to help authors all over the globe, write marketable books, sell them, promote their messages, but more importantly, in my opinion, make an impact on those who really need them. So it's very exciting. And that's what I'm super excited today to share with you. Let's see, we got another person coming in. So I just let them in. All righty. Moving along. So, since 2018, I've done a lot of learning and a lot of listening. Sometimes I actually think that the most learning happens when you're not talking and when you are listening. And I've sat back and really assessed the authors I've had the chance to work with all over, all types, what makes their authorpreneur journey successful. And it comes down to what I like to call the Authorpreneur Equation. And that is knowing their value, adding it with their needs, and determining a marketable solution from that. So we're going to dissect each of those. And of course, if you all have questions, you're welcome to throw them in the chat, or we'll have plenty of time at the end to discuss those as well. So if you want to become an authorpreneur, this is the direction, the very simple. I'm not a math major, so this equation must have to be something that we can all tackle, because math is not my favorite forte, but authorpreneurship is. And I truly believe if you know your value, you embrace it, you align it with their needs, you're going to identify a marketable solution. So let's start with your value. And I want you to, grab a piece of paper or notebook or something as we're navigating this, or take a moment to kind of jot down some of these thoughts, because I think this is probably one of the hardest things for authors who have intention of becoming an authorpreneur, or even entrepreneurs who are interested in building and adding the author aspect to it. This is hard because we are very close to what we bring to the community and what the value we believe we have. But sometimes there's a difference between the value we see and the value other people see in us. And that's where the listening comes in. I like to sit back and ask myself, what is it that people come to me for regularly? What are the things that consistently they're asking me about? And not that they're just asking me about, but it's very apparent that they're willing to invest in. I think that is the missing link. We'll use my wreath business as an example. You can go to any craft store and buy a wreath. You could go to Target and get a wreath. You can go to Etsy and buy a wreath. And so I was starting to question, why were people purchasing wreaths for me? What was it about my wreaths that only they could get from me and no one else? And what I uncovered in that particular journey was the customization and the meaning behind each wreath. I made it really crystal clear that I was the hands and heart behind every wreath. You could see it with all the burns I had on my fingertips. I put love, sweat, and tears into that, but I also worked really closely with every person to ensure that the end product was in alignment with what they needed. I had people coming to me wanting wreaths that aligned with the passing of a loved one or as a birthday gift. And I started to realize that's not something that you can get everywhere. That was something of value that people were willing to invest in me to do. I want you to think about that with you. If you were to dissect the message that you were going to put on the written page, or that you already have, or in your own business, what is it that makes you you? What is it that it's only you can do? And and what is it that you love doing? I think that there's a fine line here of, just because people find it valuable that you do, if you don't love doing it, it will show. So if you're going to go down this path, make sure it's something that you really want to personally also invest your time in. So your value, knowing your value, embracing and hugging on your value, that is the first part of the equation. But the second part of the equation is this concept of needs. I have to share a very embarrassing story that has become a funny story now. Not so funny back then. When my husband and I just got married, I lived on my own for several years, and let me put some context in here. I had just gotten a job out of college, and it was under poverty line. It was quite embarrassing how little I was making. And yet I was living on my own. It was me and my cat. I had to make sure that me and baby cat were fed every week, every day, not week, every day. And how could I do that without using a budget? So I had sat down with my dad and come out with a budget on the amount of money that I made each month, how could I financially make that work? Walked away with the amount of money that I could invest in food was $70 a month in food. That is it. Okay, you gotta like context. You need to know I'm a vegetarian, so there was no meat there. You need to know that processed food was the way to go back then. This whole organic, fresh food phase that we're in, which is amazing, was not, thank heavens, back then, because I don't know what I would have been total stick. I'd have been my own carrot stick, not just eating carrot sticks. But it was, so I was living off of processed food, but everything I did was methodical. I would cook dinner, and then I would make sure before I ate, I had enough food for the next day. And this is the way that I was able to survive. So my husband and I get married, and we go on our honeymoon, and we come back and we go to the grocery for the first time together, and we're pushing around the cart. And I'm still in this perspective of, I only have $70 to feed both of us, which is silly, but it'd been ingrained in me. And he decides to pick up a box of brownies and throw it into the shopping cart, to which we had a little dispute in the middle of the grocery store over this box of brownies. Because I asked him, Corey, is this, why are the brownies? Is it a need or a want? Do you just want this? We don't have money to just do once. We need to invest in our needs. And he's like, Stephanie, it's a 99-cent box of brownies. Just, it's okay. And I had to help him understand that if you buy the brownies, we might not have budget for something else that maybe our bodies actually need. Of course, we ended that day with, absolutely, sometimes you totally need the brownies. I know that. And we got the brownies. But it has become a cornerstone now of how I look at marketing and understanding the people that invest in our work, because inherently in our core are the people who could benefit most from our message, our business, our books. They have two buckets of need, or two buckets of how they invest their money. One is in a bucket of needs and a bucket of wants. Whether they can articulate that is reality. You know, in the bucket of needs, this is stuff they budget for every month, and everybody's needs are different and unique. And that makes total sense and totally worth it and what have you, but it goes back to their own core values. For instance, some people totally embrace exercise. You know, Andrea, I know that like yoga is big for you. So like maybe a gym membership might be cool, or like your yoga, maybe you have, I mean, you're a yoga instructor, so maybe different, but maybe exercise is like probably a core of who you are. For me, I really want it to be, but every year that I go and like look at the budget to get a gym membership, I don't do it because I think about it, because it's not a need. It needs, even though it needs to be, it doesn't mean it is a need. Whereas vacations are a core need of mine. My feet must touch the sand every year. It is important for me to recharge. And so when we're coming up with our budget, a vacation is always that. That's not the same for everybody. But if you are looking at how to become the most successful entrepreneur, you need to understand your value, and then you need to make sure your value meets a need. If it meets a need of your target reader, your target client, it's a no-brainer that they're going to buy your book. They're going to invest in your products and services because they've already budgeted for it. But if it's a want, they're going to think about it. Doesn't mean they won't purchase it, but it's going to be a harder sell. These people are going to have to, if they think, they have to think about it. And as they're thinking about it, they also might think about all the things that they shouldn't invest in relation to that. So when you're coming up with the most successful entrepreneur journey in the equation, understanding how your value really meets a need of the world's is a pivotal part, and something that sets you apart. And that's what uncovers this marketable solution, right? So all of us have problems. Listen, we all probably need therapy, right? Like we all have things and pain points in life and struggles we're dealing with. They're all a part of who we are. And if you speak to any marketer and they don't have you uncover the pain points or problems of your target reader, your target client, your target audience, run for the hills, because that's the core place you always start. Understanding those will help you uncover the needs, like the core needs of the people who are going to invest with you. And if you align those core needs with the value you bring, that's where you identify this marketable solution. And how will your book and business be a part of that? And for entrepreneurs, that's the answer. They blend, they overlap, as long as it's something that they are also willing to invest in. There's nothing more saddening to this marketer over here than when we've uncovered your value, we uncover their needs, but the outcome is not a solution that someone will invest in. And we want that, right? Like we want that exchange of energy because that's how you keep the authorpreneur boat afloat. And that is the simplistic version of what I call the authorpreneur equation. Now, I do want to just take a moment and acknowledge a couple of things here. And it's quite simply written here. Writing a book, anybody can do, unfortunately. I say unfortunately, and it's fortunate, unfortunate. But if you go on Amazon, anybody can write a book nowadays without needing it to be a good book or even a marketable book. Anyone can write a book. I've seen many people form a business, and that's fortunate and unfortunate too, because some businesses become unnecessary competition to businesses that are strong and amazing. Some are predatory, some don't meet a need, or some fall flat, right? So anyone can do both of those things, but I really don't think everyone has the purview to do it all successfully if they're not coming at it through the lens of that equation. And that equation actually helps us get outside of ourselves. As an entrepreneur, it's really easy to sit over and like find yourself wrapped within your own thoughts on the journey. But if you really want to be successful at that equation, if you want to solve that unknown, that equation unknown, it really is that taking it out of you and realizing that you have something that the world needs and values and will invest in, and you create a solution that will meet that need directly. So this is a framework that we use here at the emPowered PR group, and I think this is a good place for us in our discussion today to kind of navigate, because you're probably like, okay, great, Stephanie, I've got these ideas, I kind of know the next right step maybe, but like, what is the next right step of if I really am wanting to build or grow a business and alongside with my book? So this is a framework we use here. Currently, it's called the emPowered Author Framework. It's about to be switched to the Author Impact Framework, but that's neither here nor there. But this framework is a visual tool that really roots us in where do we need to put our energy? So here in the marketing space, there's a thing called the shiny new object syndrome, or I've had someone call it the beagle syndrome, or the squirrel, where do I go? I like to say if we are really methodical and focused on our message and our strategy, we can make the most impact and the biggest impact. So I have found in having the opportunity to navigate and work directly with authors, I have found that that this framework is helpful. And we're going to look at it at a large scale, and then I'll kind of break it apart a little bit for you all as well before we get to the questions and answers section. But I wanted to share with you, I've uncovered that there's really 3 reasons that most people are writing a book. And there might be nuances to each of those reasons, but knowing those reasons will help us direct the next right step. I think it's also important to understand those reasons and how they help you figure out where to put your energy in. There's 1,000 things you could do. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to do the one thing that is going to bring you the success you desire and the impact you are looking to make? And understanding your reasons and getting that focus, that's where you identify the solutions to really build that authorpreneur business. All right. Are there any questions? I'll just pause for a second. Are there any questions at this point that you all have, or you all like hanging in there with me? All's good? All's good. Okay. Awesome. So I want to acknowledge a couple things. We have different people who are on today, maybe in different spots of the plate of their authorpreneur journey, and others who might listen later who also might be in different spots. And I just want to uncover here that that there are also 3 places you might be sitting. You maybe have never written a book yet, which is totally fine. Awesome. Maybe you've written a book, but you haven't created a business from it. That's fine too. Or maybe you have a business, but not a book, and you want to leverage a book to grow your business. So I realize that there's 3 places you might be in this conversation, and I want to unpack and I want to give some ideas on, no matter where you are, how you might want to find value in embracing what an authorpreneur and entrepreneurship can do for you. So it starts, in my opinion, with how do you see a book? And I'm curious, before I go to the next slide, I'm curious, put in the chat, how do you see a book? I know that is a very vague. Oh, Andrea, you're like, yep, I'm all 3. Check. I love it. I love it. But what do you, when you see a book in relation to this conversation, how do you see it? I don't want to give away answers or thoughts. A legacy. Oh, I love that, Andrea. It's true. I see the cover. I love that too, Kenneth, right? Like you close your eyes, it's fortunate, unfortunate that there's this saying, like, don't judge a book by its cover, but we all do, and it's real. And in the world of thousands and thousands and thousands of books, you want to make sure that yours is being seen and the cover's the first place. Miranda, yeah, I see it as opportunity, like untapped opportunity, right? Like maybe there are people that could benefit from your stuff that you've not been able to reach because this might be how they consume information. It's awesome. 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 Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for entertaining that. All right. Oh, we got another one in. Was this Chi? Let's see. Yeah. To document an experience, to leave a legacy, to make an impact in a current discussion by reaching a wide audience. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm so glad I didn't hear anyone say, I see alarms going off. No. I'm glad no one said, I see billions and billions and billions of dollars. Not that that's not an option. Of course, every book has value and potential, but the way you all are seeing books is realistic. And that is a beautiful lens to see it, because that's how a book can really be used to help build or grow a business. And I think we have to start specifically with the book, because I think that you could write any book, but if we aren't writing a marketable book, we're missing an opportunity to build that business alongside of it. So if you haven't written a book yet, or you have a business, if you haven't written a book yet, or created a business from it, or if you've got a business and you've not leveraged a book to build it, here are some tips on how to not just write any book, but how to write a marketable book. And it's important because there is a difference between the two. So I say, to write a marketable book, this is an opportunity. I'm just going to put all of this on here. Oops, go back so you can see it. I want you to think about it as an opportunity for you to leverage this expertise that you bring to the world. There is a difference between a one-to-one approach and a one-to-many approach. I think books allow you to do both, actually. And in the perspective of this conversation, many people love to think about books as a one-to-many, right? You write it once, you reach many people. But as you're reaching many people, you're reaching the ones, you're reaching individuals, and you would never have enough opportunity, enough hours in the day to have enough calls to reach all the people through conversations. It's just not feasible. So a book allows you to do that. This concept of write to your reader is something that I'm a big believer in. And it's this belief that there's actually, for most authors, 2 drafts that you write on a book. The first draft is the story that you have to get out. Like, writing is therapy. Like, can I get an amen? Because it totally is therapy. Like let's get it out on paper, and it's cathartic. It's a part of our journey. But I always say the second draft of writing the book is the draft where you're making the shift and realizing that thank you for getting it out and working through it. But that second draft is the difference, where it's not about you, it's about them. And it's about, thank you, Kenneth, for the amen. Yes. It's about them, and it's about writing to your reader. If you want to meet their needs, you need to know their needs. And then you need to figure out what part of your book and your manuscript aligns with that. What part of that is important to them. And sometimes that means there might be parts of your story that aren't relevant. And that's really hard to sit with, because we think all of our stories relevant. But when we make that pivot, we're writing a book, not just because we have a story to tell, but because we have people we want to work with and they have needs that we want to meet. And so writing to your reader will help you do that. You can also incorporate this book into how your business is currently working. So if there are things you are doing, how can a book help with that? I've worked with many authors who come to the table thinking they're going to write a manuscript, and really they need a workbook, or vice versa, that they already have a program and they want to use a book to help elevate this program, and they don't know how. And there's thought leadership that comes out from a book, but the workbook element of it might be the most meaningful that they can incorporate into their programs immediately and increase their revenue stream, which I also think is really cool. Or maybe so there's a book I'm working on right now. I'll use me as an example that I've been noodling on for several years. And it took me until now to realize why. And it's because I had to let it marinate and realize, how is this book going to be used with the people I get to work with, and how can I align it with my business models, right? And so sometimes it's really making sure that you want the book to be incorporated in the work you're doing or the work you want to be doing, and then you use it as like a calling card to open doors for new relationships, new business opportunity, new kind of elements to go with it. But it all comes down to a marketable book. So this is that difference between writing that first draft for you and that second draft for them. Alrighty, and then we pivot over to, okay, so now maybe you have the book, and I'm going to put all these in real quick. I think, let's see. Hold on, hang tight, ladies and gentlemen. Go back. Why did my computer? Here we go. Good golly. All right. So maybe you have written the book already, or the book is near done and you're on the verge of bringing it to life. How do you leverage the book to create a marketable business? Again, it's not just any business. It's one that, remember the equation, that encapsulates all of your value into a bottle for you to share with goodness with other people. And it does it in a way that meets a need that other people will invest in. And this is how you do it. You hone in on what is your unique expertise. I hate to break it to all of us, but there's really no unique story out there independently. Like, there's really nothing that's unique except the lens by which you experience life, right? Your perspective on it all is what's unique. And so how do you embrace your uniqueness and your unique expertise? So maybe it's a skill or a perspective you have that the perspective might not be unique, but your perspective on it is. That's where it becomes marketable. That's where you become marketable. And then how do you listen? Again, I feel like I'm living proof of this because I fought the entrepreneurship every step of the way. I didn't want to do any of it. But I stopped and listened. And I'm really bad at that, y'all. Andrea, you might know this about me because you too. But I mean, I love to talk. I don't mean to. I just love to talk. So listening is not an easy skill for me to learn, but it is an important skill, because when you pause and you listen, that's when you start to realize, okay, people are asking for this. And when they're asking for this, maybe what I didn't see as valuable is. And maybe there's something there that I can be of service to others. Deeper days. It's all in the pause. It is taking a breath and listening. That is so pivotal. And I think that is the difference between just diving into a business, because let's be real, entrepreneurship ain't no easy path. Not easy being a business owner, but it is totally worth it. And so if you listen and you pause, you can really embrace it. The other thing is identifying your goals. Now, I recently had someone on my team ask me directly, Stephanie, what's the goal for the next 5 years? And I kind of giggled, and I was kind of hopeful it didn't come across tacky, but I giggled because I go, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, I know most business owners should have a 5-year plan, but to be honest, I have a closer plan. Like, I look in the next year, right? And then I break it down into quarters. 5 years seems too long. Who knows? So much can change. The pandemic is proof. So much can change in the split second. But as I've started to articulate my goals for creating my own marketable business, I started to realize that something really crazy happens. You reach them. How do you reach a goal if you don't create a goal, right? Like, so I'm starting to identify that you can do things if you create goals, even if they feel a bit stretched. And then this derivative offerings is something that I think authors just inherently are gifted with. And that is, are there legs, figurative legs, to your book or your business that you've not thought about? For instance, in that listening that you're doing, do you realize, oh, oh my gosh, there are people who need XYZ and I didn't think about it. My second book is a prime example. After I published book one, I thought, well, good. Whew, I got that out of my system. All's good. And they go, where's book number two? I'm like, oh my gosh, book number two. Book number one took so long. Like, how could I do book number two? And then as I was listening, I started to realize they were actually wanting a journal to align with book number one. And so that was a derivative offering I could do. Or people started asking me to do workshops and speak in their communities and their teams. Awesome. Or, all of the doors are just open. These are what I call derivative offerings. Are there things, does your message have legs? And if your message has legs, we'll put some pantyhose on it or something funny like that. Like do something with it and run, embrace it, and figure out through that listening, what is it that people will invest in? That's how the marketable business comes to light. Okay. Now, what if you are somebody who has an existing business, but you haven't, let's see, I'm going to get them all out. One more, but you haven't leveraged a book to grow your existing business. Here's some tips. Here's some things to think about. I want you to think about your current business or your current offerings and figure out what could you do more efficient and effectively, and how can a book be a tool for that? Can your book be used as a conversation starter? Or not even a conversation starter, as the conversation altogether? Like, could your book be a prerequisite for someone to work with you? Or are there things you do more and more that people keep asking for? Some wise person told me once, if you say something more than a handful of times, write it down. You probably need to write a book about it. And I'm like, you're probably right. So these are efficiencies, because I don't know if you're all like me, I get excited about the shiny new. I have my own squirrel syndrome or beagle syndrome, and identifying these opportunities to simplify the things I say regularly allows me to go deeper with people. And I get very excited about that. You can also leverage a book within a current and existing business. So again, how can you look at what you're currently doing and write a book about it? So book number 3 that I'm working on is 100% like that. I can't help every author out there. I so want to. There's not enough of me. And so book number 3, which is coming out here soon, drum roll, it's exciting. It's my way of being able to help people I can't currently help, and or open doors in conversation with people that I currently do help to go deeper. So it can be built within your current business. It can also be used to seek new potential business, right? There are people out there that don't know you exist. Maybe they consume information in the written form or in the audible form, and a book allows you to open those conversations. That always gets me excited. These last 2 bullets align with the story that goes back to my wreath journey. So I was making all these wreaths and my fingers were half falling off, and it was so much fun, with air quotes. It was fun. I love the creative therapy around making these wreaths. But what I realized is that I really also enjoyed the creative therapy process, and I wanted to share it with other people. So I created a partnership with the local craft store in my area and decided to start holding monthly wreath workshops for people. So we would do thematic wreaths together, and I just had so much fun. And one day I had made really great relationships with the individuals that were within the that worked at the store. And one of the ladies was helping me set up, and she goes, Stephanie, aren't you worried that like some of these attendees are going to take your skill and do their own wreaths or run and start their own business? And I go, no. I should be, but I'm not. I mean, of course, you got to know I come from a place of abundance. So I figure when you share, you get. So I didn't overthink it, but I noodled on that during the workshop. And on the other side, I approached her and said, okay, here's why I don't think that that's proof. Because I've identified, when I look at the people who come to my wreath workshops, none of those people are people who would normally buy a wreath from me. And yet many of them now have learned this craft, and that's great. So now they've invested in time with me, and that was so much fun. Maybe they'll go make their own wreaths, or oddly enough, what was happening is they realized how hard it was to make a wreath and decided they would start investing in me to make wreaths for them now. So they didn't want to make them anymore. And it uncovered to me that no matter what your niche is, your target audience, I believe every target audience has 2 sub niches. And one of them is people who value time over money, and others are people who value money over time. there are people that might fully love and embrace what you have going on in your current business, who value their time more than money and are willing to invest in you. Their time is precious and valuable, and they're willing to invest in you directly, and because they want to save time. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe their money is really precious to them and they would much rather learn how to do something themselves than invest in you to do it for them. And so a book can be a great tool to help you reach people at a much lower cost than what it might cost for them to actually work with you. And you might find you have built a whole other side of your business that you didn't even know existed because your current business didn't have the potential to reach that sub niche. Niche and sub niche. How many times can you say that? But do you value time over money or money over time? I found that to be a really insightful part of my own journey. And I think it probably is one of yours too. So what is your next step? I'd love for y'all to throw in the chat, or you can come off of chat if you want, because we are actually at the end of the content sharing, and this is a great time for question and answers. But I'd love to know, how have you identified where you are on the Authorpreneur Equation, in the sense of, have you written the book? You're about to write the book. It's coming out. I've got a business. I don't. And what do you feel like might be a good next step, or is there a missing link in your equation? Any thoughts? And if not, that's okay too, but I'd love to hear from y'all if there are. Yeah, Andrea, I need to clearly define my messages. That's a really valid point, and I think that is hard. We call that an elevator pitch in the marketing space, and that is how if you see someone on the street or in the elevator, and maybe you won't so much now post-pandemic, but back in the day, think about if you're in the elevator with someone, you have 30 seconds to talk to them. How could you articulate the value that you bring to people? And how do you articulate that need and you're a solution to that need? I don't think that there's a overnight answer. I think it's something that you come up with a good answer and then you continue to carve it and make it until it's a fantastic answer. And you get stronger and stronger at that when you start to see who else is investing in your work, your authorpreneur world, and purchasing your book. And again, that comes with a lot of listening and a lot of trial and error. I kind of find those elevator opportunities as an opportunity for me to test out something. So if I find myself stumbling over how I'm articulating that I've written a book or I have a business, then obviously I need a bit more time to work on that. Or maybe I need to learn how to get something really succinct and then stop talking and do listening, right? So that is a fun journey. You can test that out in your next elevator experience. But I think all of us can really clearly define our messages too. That's a good one. Anything else, or any other kind of next steps or things you guys are thinking and or questions you have? We have plenty of time. If you all have any specific marketing questions, I'd be happy to answer that too. Just so y'all know, as someone who I told you does a very bad job of listening, the intentional pause on calls when you ask for questions is so hard for me because I just want to fill it with all this goodness. So anyways, thanks for bearing with me while I'm learning how to embrace that pause. Andrea, good question. What is the best way to sell your books online? Great idea. So we live in a world that everybody thinks passive income is the way to go, and nothing's passive. So I believe, however, that online is the best place for any authorpreneur ever to build their author platform. So an author platform is that tool to sell books online. And it's a cluttered space. Online is cluttered. I mean, it's noisy out there. It used to not be, but it's noisy. It's full of chaos. And so I want you to stick out amongst the chaos. And the best way to do that online is to become unapologetic on who you want to reach and talk about it. Ooh, good question, Chi. What is an author platform? Okay, so I'm going to add to that before I go any deeper. So there's a great book. Hang on, let's see if I have it over here. No, it's in my bookshelf, but there's a great book on, I think it's called Your First 1000 Books, that talks about all things author platforms, but I'll give you the gist of it. The author platform is literally a way that you sell books. It is your tool to sell books online. And it is a nuanced phrase in the publishing space that most people don't have any clarity on what that means, but it's always where I start. Anytime I do any work with authors, I always want to start with your platform, because people will go to it, and we want to make sure there's clarity in your messaging. So some people would think of a platform as your website or your Facebook page or your Amazon, Author Central, and all those pieces, and those play a part of it, a very visible part of it, but it's not the platform in and of itself. The platform is literally, how are you selling books? I shared earlier about my wreath journey. That was not a digital platform at all, but yet I had business cards that went on every wreath, and each of those business cards directed people to join my email list, and that actually began my author platform. So I want you to think about, how am I selling books or growing my business? In today's world, most people are doing that virtually. I mean, woe and gone are the days of you having a storefront in the strip mall next to Walmart. Like, it's just not what people are doing anymore. It's just not how our world works. So I want you to think of a storefront for you, though, and your authorpreneur business as a digital storefront. So if someone searches you, how are they going to find you, and what will that look like? Is that messaging consistent? Are you telling them about your book and about the business that you have alongside it? Sometimes that's articulating it on a website. Many times it is. Many times it's having a presence on social media where your target reader or client lives. But it's also about being open to sharing value so that people can do what is called permission marketing, or permission kind of value add in, where they go, I read that about Chi, and that's really interesting. And I'm now taking the permission to say, yes, I'm interested in buying a book or aligning with him in his business. Many times that is done through blog writing or videos or some form of value add content given that allows for this permission. So there's two books. If you're in the business of reading, I am. You all might be too. One is your 1000 first 1000 copies, I think is what it is, that talks about this a little bit. And my forthcoming book will talk about it a bit more. All of you all are on the email list, so you'll hear when that comes out in the next month or so, to learn more about platform work. But that's a good book. And then the other great book to read is called They Ask, You Answer. And that book is actually written from a non-marketer, which I think is amazing, and about how to do what is called inbound marketing, or this permission marketing I'm talking to you about. It's a brilliant read. It's really easy to digest. And this guy is a pool salesman, a fiberglass pool salesman. And he was on the verge of losing his business, and he had to do something. And he leveraged this inbound marketing strategy that I innately believe in completely, and I think every author should embrace it. So going back, Andrea, to your question, is how do you sell your book online? I think the important part is making sure you have a strong messaging out there, that it's really clear that you're an author. Surprisingly, a lot of authors don't have that. It's scary. It's vulnerable. I don't want to tell people I wrote a book, but I need them to know about it. So how do you do that? So you make sure that you have strong messaging and clarity that you've written a book and how they can buy it. And then what are you doing alongside with that? If you're interested in building kind of this authorpreneurship that goes with it, how do they know how to take and lift the message from the pages and into their own lives for implementation? Okay, and then the best way, okay, I think you had to, if you share a link to your book, what line should it be on top of it is to sell? What does that, Andrea, can you give me clarity on that? If you share a link to your book, okay. I'm going to answer it this way, but give me clarity in the chat if you'd like. So if you're going to encourage someone to buy a book, this is what I'll tell you. My 2 cents. Everybody will think differently, but I'm a believer that people do not peruse Amazon like they peruse a bookstore, right? You don't go around Amazon and you just go smelling books and hang out in different sections and categories. Instead, usually you go searching like a specific word, or somebody recommended a book to you. So I want you to be thinking about the best way to get people to an online platform. And I hate to break it to y'all because it feels so much like a monopoly. It is. Amazon is pretty much the main way most people buy books. If they're not going to a bookstore, it just is. And anyway, so I would say leverage, an Amazon link to share that. But I also love people to kind of go through a process to get to that, because I want them to know about you in that journey, right? So if it's just transactional, hey, go buy the book, then they'll leave and they might not come back. But if they go to your website to get a link to go buy your book, that might be a way to get them to understand the authorpreneur side of you and what else you're offering. There was another element I was going to add to that. It was Amazon. That might be it. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. There was another piece to that puzzle. But Andrea, was that in alignment with your question? Yes, no, maybe so. Good enough. Okay. Great questions. Any other questions? I think we got a couple minutes for additional ones. Happy to answer them. Take advantage. While you're writing any questions or thoughts you have, whatever link you use to encourage people to buy your book or your business, make sure you're taking full advantage on any social media platform you're on, that you have links to that there. Don't make it hard for people. Hate to break it to y'all, but collectively people are lazy. Individually, they're not. They're awesome. Collectively, we are a lazy bunch of people who will not take the extra step, especially in today's digital world. So make it easy. I want you to always be thinking about that second draft perspective, that reader, that person that's a client that's interested in learning more about you, and gift them that. Make it easy. Don't overcomplicate it, because you'll lose people in the process, unfortunately, because it's noisy and it's busy and it's noisy. All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I'll go to the final slide, but then if you have any other, one popped in. How often should you promote on social media? Yes, Kenneth, I feel like I'm begging or being annoying, but I also know the almighty algorithm hides things. They do. So here's my recommendation. I always have this like little phrase that I say around here. Don't give in, give way, or give up, give value. If you give value first, I truly believe you won't be begging or annoying. So what that means is sometimes you're going to be promoting your book without promoting your book. Sometimes you're going to be talking about your message in a way that you're like, but I just want to tell people to go buy the book. Well, great. But if you tell them to go buy the book all the time, they're going to check out. But if they start connecting with you on a personal level and you remain relevant, they're more likely to buy it. I had a pastor once acknowledge something really cool that I want to share with y'all. He said, in life, people come across crossroads or intersections. And if you meet them in the journey and they're not at that intersection, they might not be open to what you have to tell them or what you want to give or the type of person you want to, empower them to become. You might have a solution to a need that they don't know that they need yet until they hit that intersection. And that's why it's really important to constantly talk about it in a way that's value focused, because you never know when someone comes to that intersection and they're like, oh my gosh, I absolutely need what that book is going to do or what that authorpreneur business is offering. But I also know that it will feel very salesy if you're always talking about buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Typically and every social media platform is different. I will be completely honest with you all. I hate Instagram, I love Instagram. I hate Twitter. Hate it. I just hate it. Don't ask me why. I just hate it. Hate Twitter. Not a big fan of Pinterest outside of looking for recipes. That's just my 2 cents. So I always hang out on LinkedIn, because that is where people go for conversions. I really believe it. So if your book has impact in any way on a professional audience, LinkedIn is a great place to be. I like to dabble on Facebook because I'm of that generation for whatever reason. Thank you, Kenneth, for telling me. Yes, Twitter's hard to have a following. I just don't like it. And that's also a problem. If you don't like a social media platform, you will not engage on it appropriately. So it's a mixture of knowing the platforms that your target reader lives or your target client and the ones you like. Because if not, you won't do it. So anyways, so I'm going to throw this out, Kenneth, with the caveat that The algorithms on every platform is different, but usually a happy medium is a couple times a week, and it's a couple times a week as long as you have something good to say. If you don't have anything to say that's interesting or relevant, if you're just going to say, hey, buy my book again tomorrow, don't do it. But I do encourage you to kind of take a step back and go, all righty, so it's August and people are going back to school and they might be completely overwhelmed with understanding like balance in life. And you know what? It's important that they probably embrace some of the yoga principles in their own world. And maybe we should talk about that. And that's value giving. So, I mean, Andrea, you have a book that's yoga based, but you're not selling the yoga book in that. You're talking about the value of balance in a time that many people might feel out of balance when they are trying to get into a new normal, a new routine. That makes your message relevant. You're being seen, people are engaging with you on it. And it just so happens that your profile on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, wherever you want to be, they then might go, oh, I like this Andrea girl. Oh, I just uncovered she has a book. So you can talk about the book, but I wouldn't talk about it every day. I would make it really meaningful and purposeful, and I would spend your social conversation really around value. So Kenneth, I hope that's helpful. Alrighty, so at a high level, this is just something that we do here at the emPowered PR group, and you guys are a part of the second bullet. Every month we offer complimentary webinars, and at no cost, because I'm just a woman that likes to give. So how can I give and how can I serve? And we only really tell people through those who are following me on social and on our email list. So all of you all are now on the list. Welcome to the email list so that you can find out about these other ones each month if you want to be a part of it. Andrea, hang on, give me a sec, and then I'll answer your question. We also have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday. If you like to listen to Stephanie in your ears, I would love to go on walks with you and hikes and driving down the road with the screaming kids in the back, and we can have a conversation with you tuning them off. That's all great. We also offer free chats if we can be of help. So you just go to empoweredprgroup.com and you can, oh, Kenneth, you're so kind that the podcast is fire. If you haven't posted a review, Kenneth, it would like mean the world to me. That is very, very challenging for people to post reviews, but thank you for saying that and sharing it. I absolutely love podcasting. Oh, Andrea, you're so sweet. You raised your hand. Were you just saying nice photo? You're so kind. You are so, so kind. But I also want you all to know we do offer free 15-minute chit chats. There's nothing, I'm not in the business of selling. I'm in the business of abundance. And so if I can help in any way, go to connect on our website and we can get on the phone and chat for 15 minutes about whatever kind of needs you have. And if we can offer you anything on the back end to help you support your needs, we're happy to. And if not, join us every month for these different webinars. I hope you found them really helpful, and the podcast and all of the fun stuff, and engage with me on social. It makes me happy. But you will not find me on Twitter. We now know this. Stephanie will not be on Twitter. Any parting thoughts from you guys? I've really enjoyed having you all here today. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you all are embracing this authorpreneur kind of journey, and big things are ahead, you guys. I believe in y'all. I absolutely believe in you all. And I know that there are others out there that need what you're bringing. So share it with them, give it to them. Awesome. You're so welcome, Kenneth. Thank you guys. We did record this, so we will share it out via email, and I'll make sure you guys get that as well if it would be helpful. You'll have a good rest of your day. We'll talk later.